Hello everyone, this is Chandrasekhar here. Today we'll talk about difference in between waterfall methodology and agile methodology, or you can say difference in between waterfall methodology and DevOps methodology, which is one of the very important question and very frequently asked question in interview. Let's understand what the problem development team were facing initially. Like the way you can see on my screen, development team used to work only on dev and testing environment. Testing team 2 works only on dev or testing environment. And that is pretty much a kind of universal truth. The development team and testing team do have very less control on production environment. And always remember this. This could be one of the other, I won't say interview question, but by the time you're entering to a job, it's pretty much important for you to understand that it will be operations team who controls how things goes in production environment and not the development or testing team. Development or testing team always works on development or testing environment. Now, development team works only on dev and testing environment. They write various sort of codes based on environment which they use to create and to design for themselves, and that's their local environment. They write their code in their local environment. They test their code in their local environment on various grounds, on various test cases, which testing team prepares and post that it's been delivered to operations team so that it can be deployed into production environment. Now, the problem here is, let's talk about a bit of the problem because that is what the session is all about. Development team, while writing the code, must have created a infrastructure for themselves. Perhaps they will be using or they will be writing the code for Linux operating system environment. And in Linux too, we do have a number of flavors that, as you know, we do have Ubuntu, we do have Red Hat Enterprise Linux, we do have CentOS, we do have SUSE Linux, we do have Kali Linux, we do have Debian. A number of different operating systems are there in Linux too. So development team would have created some sort of infrastructure for themselves while writing the code. Perhaps testing team will not be using same sort of infrastructure for their development. Might happen, isn't it? So if that happens, the code which is written by development team will not work efficiently with testing team. And testing team will consider it as a kind of failure on testing grounds, which is not true because development team have developed, it's been certainly tested by developers also on their environment locally. Just because of the mismatch in between development team environment and testing team environment, testing team causes code as a kind of bugged code or a failed code, which is not true. Now, what the solution of this problem could be? How if there is a very initial communication at the very initial level in between development team and testing team? If development team and testing team interacts with each other at very initial level, then the problem is resolved automatically. So the testing team understands what the infrastructure development team is setting at the initial stage, and they will set infrastructure accordingly while performing testing on top of the code which is written by development team. This problem will be resolved, which was not the situation. This resolution was never in the mind of all those infrastructure designers or all those designers who brought different teams to work together. This was not in their mind, and that is where one of the problem was happening. Second thing is, how about operations teams issues? Operations team works altogether differently. They have infrastructure ready, they maintain infrastructure for production environment, but again, they are also not aware what sort of development or what sort of testing development team and testing team is doing, because of which by the time of deployment, by the time code reaches to operations team for deployment, 90% of times it was failed, because many times the code was not matching with the criteria, with the configuration which operations team were maintaining. It was again a problem there because operations team considered their infrastructure as production ready, but the code did not match those configuration criteria, because of which code failed. And operations team marked that as a provided a feedback to make more of the changes there on the code level. Now development team again had to go back and modify the code based on the feedback which is provided by operations team. Now this is a nightmare for development team, testing team, and operations team as well, certainly, because operations teams certainly need to maintain infrastructure ideally for very long period of time by the time development happened, and now again when the feedback is getting incorporated. These were some of the panaceas which different teams were going through. Development team which were not aware of operations team setup, were not aware of server configuration. Testing team too were not aware what development team is doing, and operations team certainly they were not aware what testing team and development team is doing. So this brings to a conclusion that different team worked in silos. Development team, testing team, and operations team, they worked in silos. Development team and testing team, perhaps at some point of time, they started working together, but operations team certainly were considered as a kind of team who just maintains infrastructure. So a communication was pretty much important. That is what we can understand as of now, to have an efficient deployment, to have a deployment which is robust enough, which maintains all sort of code, which has all sort of changes within it, which when deployed to production environment will be efficient enough for end users, will be efficient enough for customers, because certainly when a developer works on development activity, it reaches to customers and customer utilizes it. So for that, a communication channel must have opened. DevOps brought that feature. DevOps said that I am going to provide a communication channel. Certainly I am going to provide a communication channel by means of which different teams will interact with each other, different teams will talk with each other. As it says, development plus operations. This allowed different team to talk with each other, different team to interact with each other, so that by the time code reaches to operations team for production deployment, it is actually production ready. So now channel was opened in between development team and ops team so that they can communicate regularly. What happens if they communicate regularly? Operations team is aware of various things. Operations team is aware of what sort of infrastructure is required for code to be deployed properly. Also, operations team will maintain the infrastructure according to development which is going on, or certainly the challenges operations team will, because operations team understand what they need to deploy the code to production. There could be a set of pre-checks. There could be a set of post-checks after software development. There could be some of the steps which operations team has in their mind while performing software development. Everything should be incorporated there in the code itself. In case if we want to have a automated fashion of deployment, which certainly our DevOps is all about, right? DevOps is about automating configuration rather than having the manual and legacy setup of deploying any of the configuration. That is where DevOps helped. DevOps brought different teams together. DevOps bridged the gap in between development or testing team with operations team, by means of which deployment happens properly, deployment is more successful than how it was before, and it is in turn helping IT industry to grow properly and provide all necessary sort of support, all necessary sort of development or software which customer looks for. We'll talk more about this as of now. Thank you.